Hello, welcome to Chats Over Coffee with my yoga teacher, a show where a comedian talks to his yoga teacher about, well, yoga and some other stuff. I didn't used to introduce the show until last week when I did it, and now I'm not sure whether I should carry on doing it or should just revert to not having an introduction. So, can someone let me know? Here comes the show. Because the world of podcasting is mad now. 10 years ago, the only podcasters were like people that you never heard of doing it out of their bedrooms and stuff.
Yeah.
And now it's like Michelle Obama's got one, and like Harry and Meghan have just started one.
Oh yeah.
But I thought, well, that's obviously a rip-off, isn't it? Because they've obviously thought, oh, the English guy and the American woman sort of dynamic goes really well on podcasts.
They have. So they've ripped us off.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Someone's been snooping.
That's so funny.
Since we actually recorded the last one, we've actually seen each other in real life, haven't we?
Yeah.
Was that alright? Do you think that, like, it was one of those things you turn up and, oh, your profile picture is a few years old?
I hope not, considering I do have my video on right now.
No. You look taller in your photo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it's fine. Do you feel like it's different? I don't really feel like it's any different.
What I did think, there's not been many people I've seen in real life that I'm, like, friendly with enough to... The having to stand apart thing was a bit like, oh, that's a bit crap, isn't it? I don't mean like, you know, in a normal circumstances you'd have opened the door and I'd have been all over you like a dog or something, but do you know what I mean? It's
like
just
a puppy.
It's just a little bit, that's not a natural human thing.
It's not a natural human thing to stand that far away as well, because, you know, you're trying to keep your social distance, which is supposed to be between 1 and 2, depending on who you talk to, but like 2 meters away or whatever, and it's actually quite far. Like,
it is.
It's not normal to stand 2 meters from someone you're talking to.
So I actually feel a bit sad for the rest of the day. I don't know. It's a bit rubbish. This sometimes. Human beings are really adaptable. I think I said that in the last week. It was like you told them, now you can't do this, and you're like, oh, that sounds terrible. Or we're never going to be able to do that. And then 2 weeks later, it's just normal, and that's how the way you think now. But every now and then you snap out of it, and you're sort of like, actually, a lot of this isn't normal. Like to be treating everyone else as if they're radioactive or scum or something. It's like you were saying about elephants being social creatures, and they touch each other, don't they? Like I'm pretty sure, and stuff. You think, well, we're like that, aren't we? Really, we are social creatures, and we're just being told to rein it in a bit. So. It's weird though. When I think back to like who I hug and who I don't hug. There's like a sort of like a black book in my head. Of like when I meet people, I'm like, oh, I hug them, I don't hug them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and then you forget, and then you're like, oh shoot, I normally hug them, but we've already sat down.
Yeah. But I think there is like a sexist element to a lot of the way that people greet. When you meet like a group, why do you have to like shake hands with the guys and make sure that you like press yourself up against the females of the group and stuff? Like, it's just, I don't know. There's definitely a sexist element to that, I think.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
When my dad introduces me to his next wife to be, I should better shake her hand.
Can I shake your hand?
But it's not even like there's not even like a hierarchy involved. When I think about how like some people I hug just because that's what we do, I'm not even necessarily closer to them to some people that I never hug.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, I always hug my family and don't really hug anyone else. It's not like that. It's just random, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you have to hug your family. They get annoyed otherwise. It's always pressurised when I was young. Kiss your nan and all that stuff. And then
yeah, that's funny. We don't do that in America. It's a European thing. The whole like air cheek kiss thing where you put your head beside someone else's head and then go.
I never know whether you're supposed to make contact with people's cheek or not when you do that. However, it's like I'm
I don't know.
Really confused.
Oh man, that's hilarious. Do I squash cheeks? Do I not squash cheeks? How squashed do the cheek have to be?
Yeah, I've never felt more European, you saying that, really.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, you can kiss someone's cheek. Like, you know, you always see grandmas going, oh, give me a kiss. And then they literally turn their head and you go, mwah, and you peck the cheek or something like that. But not like the two-headed side air kiss thing. That's not.
I definitely got historical things. Like, I'm quite good friends still with a couple of people I went to school with. But because we never hugged or anything, even though, like, we just don't do it. And you're like, well... People I've met at different times in my life, you're a different person, so you do it more readily.
Or you can just decide that you're a hugger, so you're the one that always instigates the hugging. Like, I'm pretty sure that I'm a hugger. I pretty much hug. Unless it's a really weird situation, like there's 12 people and we've all just met up. I won't be trying to go around and hug everyone. But like, if you're just meeting up with your friend and they're like, oh, hey, come on in, you might hug. I think I used to be a hugger. I think I hugged a lot.
I like people to earn my hugs.
Do they have to fill out an application?
Yeah, it's effectively... I want it to be a very sort of like the first time you meet someone, shake their hand, like irrespective of gender, and just like, and then eventually they might build up to a stage where you're like, oh, we know each other now, so you break the hug seal, and then that goes into the black box in my head, and like that's what we do now.
Yeah.
And then if you have a big fight, you might get relegated back to handshakes. So.
Honestly, we should just go down the Japanese route. We should all just bow. Just bow. Yeah. That's the easiest thing. You don't have to touch anyone.
When it was kicking off, like February, March, when we kind of knew that the virus was going to be a thing, and everyone in this country was like, oh, it won't happen to us. We'll just get by just washing our hands more often and stuff. We'd be starting to do gigs where people will be like, when the compere brings you on stage, don't shake hands with them. Just like do the elbow tap or do. And I was really gunning for doing the namaste. It's like, because I saw Prince Charles do it to Narendra Modi, and I was like, oh yeah, let's like, I want to do that. But when you're in front of like a load of stag parties and people on their birthday night out and stuff, they think you're a bit of a twat for doing it, I think.
Oh dear.
So I'm sorry I haven't made much of an effort, by the way, either. I've got a bit of a shadow here.
I was wondering if you're gonna like grow it out. Is it like
I can't do it.
Like Movember but January?
This has been. I can't grow any more than this, really. I still look like a 15-year-old when I try and grow facial hair. It doesn't. It's just still just a bit on my lip and a bit on my chin, and then there's like one tiny bit there where a mole is. It comes out of that. I used to do a routine about it where I used to say that it was like I was halfway through puberty and then suddenly they ran out of funding. I only ever did 50-50 that joke, which is a shame, but lots of stuff I do just gets 50-50, even though I like it, but you have to drop it because you're playing the percentages on stage. You can't afford to do stuff that's 50-50 in those environments.
Yeah.
So it's all in the box for when I eventually have fans and I can do a show to my fans.
Yeah.
Whenever that's going to be.
Yeah.
2035 or something.
I remember when Andrew first started growing his beard, and he got one, within however many months or whatever, he got a proper beard. He stopped getting asked for his ID. And he was like, hooray!
I've been ID'd like 5 times in the last year, and I haven't been drinking. It's been when I've bought non-alcoholic beer. Well, they're like, some of them are like 0.5%, I suppose, aren't they?
Yeah.
But like, if I was trying to illegally buy beer, you think this is what you think I want to drink 20 cans of this?
You'd end up being sick just from having too much beer in your stomach.
I don't know if you've drunk non-alcoholic beer, but some of them are okay, but they're not session drinks. Like you can't drink 4 of them.
No. I found a brand of kombucha. I'm not a massive fan of kombucha, but like I think I'm not a massive fan because there's been too much hype around it a little bit. But just in terms of flavors, it's just like any other drink. But I found one that's like peach flavor, peach and something else kombucha, and it reminded me so much of a fuzzy navel without the alcohol. It was like, I love it.
Fuzzy navel? Is that a cocktail?
Is it a cocktail? I don't know. We always used to, in America, they're quite popular. It's peach flavored soda.
I'm just thinking of a fuzzy navel now. No.
I think it's because it's peach, and peaches are fuzzies.
Hairy belly button's not got the same ring to it, has it?
No, it doesn't. No. It doesn't work.
So I did a good meditation earlier.
Yeah.
Go me. And I realised that I did put a bit too much I worry at least that I'm putting too much emphasis when I talk to you about things, about whether I'm doing things well. Like last week, we were talking about doing poses well, but that's not the purpose of yoga, and I'm in agreement with you when you say that. I don't think it's like a race to become good at something physically, and similarly,
that's good.
Yeah, so I had a couple of duff meditations the last few days in terms of like, but I don't want to be thinking about it about being good or bad at it, as I've sort of just said. But sometimes I do notice that I'm not doing it very well. Like I just like lost in thought a bit too much, and then you always get lost in thought, but then you bring yourself back, and then you spend a few minutes where you're not really lost in thought, and you are kind of, I hasten to say, doing it correctly, but you know what I mean. So you have days where you're like better at it and not. But I did well today. But since I started doing it, I realised that there is very much a crossover with when I'm writing as to what's kind of going on, because I feel like when you're meditating, you're putting yourself, and although it affects you for the rest of the day and how you view, you know, events and thoughts during the day, it's not just like 20 minutes a day you're doing that so the rest of the day you can just go, so it doesn't affect you. Of course it does. It's like a complete mindset change, really. It's cumulatively, slowly over time. But you are more actively putting yourself in that space. And I feel like exactly the same thing kind of goes with me when I'm writing jokes, because I'm always writing jokes in some ways, because I'm always like thinking about jokes when I'm going about my day. Like stuff will come into my head that I need to write down, in the same way that I can have mindful moments during the day where I suddenly become less consumed with thought because I can just flick into it or whatever, you know, or something happens and I just deal with it in a mindful way, in inverted commas, the same way like a joke will come into my head and I'm like, oh, that's a joke, because I've trained my mind not just to be mindful, but I've trained my mind since, like, for even longer to look for things that are funny. So when I sit down to meditate for 20 minutes, it's exactly the same as when I sit down for a couple of hours and just try and write jokes out of nothing. You're making a concerted effort to write from nothing. Like I just sometimes pick 4 random words from the dictionary or just like phrases or something, and I will just try and write funny things about those things for a couple of hours.
Oh, that's a great idea.
I do it every. Well, I do it every day, but I've been a bit lax the last couple of weeks.
Well, it's been Christmas and New Year's, so that's a good excuse.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I don't want to get out of the habit, but also the other thing is that when you're not going to be performing any jokes on stage for another 6 months, the incentive isn't so much there, really, to be honest. But sometimes when you spend those 2 hours writing jokes, you think you're rubbish at doing it. Like you can't come up with anything. But you're doing this exactly the same thing as when you're meditating and not doing a particularly good job at that in a session. You are just putting yourself in that place where sometimes you get it right and it happens and you let these things happen. You're training yourself to be able to do that sort of thing throughout the rest of the day, and then tomorrow you'll do better at it because you've done it that day. So it's the same sort of ritual, do you know what I mean? But I feel like the crossover really makes sense, because sometimes I write and I just think, God, have I lost it? Like, did I used to just be funny years ago and now I'm dreadful? And but then a couple of days later, you just get it, everything falls into place. And I think I find the same thing happening with meditating. But then, you know, again, as I say, you're training yourself to do things so that for the rest of your day, you're still trained the mind to be able to look at things in a certain way, in a mindful way or a funny way. I've talked for a long time. Please say something.
Well, I know, they say, like, you can, you know, they call them mental habits. People, you know, tend to call them that kind of thing. Like, you can get into mental habits. But I think on the other side, it's more like you can get, when you do something a lot, you get good at it. And when you don't do it, you don't get good at it. And I know, obviously, you have your good days and your bad days, which is what you were saying just then. But, like, in general, the more you think of certain ways or think in certain patterns, the more they literally connect the neurons. And then that's the pattern that your brain wants to go in. So if you're, like, constantly a negative thinker, you have to make a conscious decision not to be. And then with a certain amount of time, that will actually change. But it's not going to happen overnight. And you have to actually make that choice. So, like, what you're saying about, like, you have to make yourself try, and then eventually you might get good at it. But then there's that idea that you'll have good days and bad days, and then who knows? It's just like with something physical, you know. We talk about your mental health as like this inanimate thing, you know. It doesn't have like any sort of physicalness to it, you know, like with you know, if you say, oh, your heart health, it's like, ooh, what's wrong? Have you had a bypass? Do you need to watch how much fat you're eating? Like, you got high cholesterol? Like, what's going on with your heart? But like with your brain, it is a physical thing. It's there. It's in your head. It's not like your consciousness or something. It's there. It's in your head. It can be healthy and unhealthy depending on what's happening with the actual organ. I just think a lot of people don't always think about the connection with the brain being an actual organ.
I'm sure they do this with people that have been meditating for years in caves and stuff. I'm sure they scan their brains, and the actual physiology of the brain is different to a brain. You are actually changing the makeup of your brain when you do these things. It's not,
exactly.
Yeah. So I actually thought of something funny. I hopefully thought of something funny the other day when my friend Alexis, who's the listener in Portugal.
Her name's Alexis. Isn't that the name of that group? What is it? Alexis? Play.
No, that's Alexa.
Oh, Alexa. Oh, thank God. Okay. Phew. I was worried for her then.
She just doesn't respond to as many commands. But she was saying that because she didn't used to do yoga because a doctor told her years ago that she had it's not hypertension, is it? But something, because she's very, very flexible.
Oh, so hypermobility.
That's it, yes.
Yeah.
So she was advised not to do it.
That's very blunt of a doctor to say. Doctors aren't very good with yoga. Don't trust your doctor. They don't know what they're talking about.
So she said it's one doctor's opinion from 15 years ago or something. So she's
well, I always think, I'll just pop this in there real quick. Doctors send people to yoga because they think it's just stretching. If your doctor signs you off for an exercise class, then you're good to go, whatever. But if your doctor says, oh, why don't you try yoga because it's gentle and stretching, they don't know what they're talking about. Don't trust them. Make sure you tell your teacher what's wrong with you. Okay, you can continue.
I don't trust what doctors say anyway. I said my granddad only had a year to live and he lived another 5. What do they know? So she was saying, because she's been less active and doing things at desks, it's it's great because yoga really is a counter to you being hunched over a desk all day. You're just doing completely the opposite when you're opening your chest and all that sort of thing. Yeah,
absolutely. And you can aim for that as well, which is what I teach in my corporate classes. They're all just aimed at trying to counter being sat all day. Definitely.
But I did think, does that mean that, in Tibet or Nepal or wherever, you get professional yogis that basically spend their whole life just doing yoga and meditating and stuff? Does that mean that, if you're doing yoga and meditating for 20 hours a day, do you then have to spend an hour working at a desk to counteract that? They just sit there for 12 hours thinking, oh, I've got to go and send some emails now just to counteract all these chest openers, It's funny, isn't
it? Oh, actually, I wanted to say, you know what you're saying about countering? So you're saying about sitting in a desk and then countering that by doing some yoga or by, leaning back, opening your chest, literally trying to do the opposite of what you're doing. A lot of yoga teachers teach one pose and then a counter pose, one pose and then a counter pose, so that your practice is even. So that if you're forward folding, the next pose would be a back bend. So it's literally the opposite. But I've really steered away from that. Over my years of teaching, I hardly ever do that. I tend to counter lifestyle. I think that's I think you see a lot more benefits from it. If you end up spending a lot of the time sitting for some reason, because you're working, then it would be nice to stretch through the front of the legs, the quads, the hip flexors, and counter sitting. If you do a lot in front of you, leaning over a desk or cooking or something with your arms, and you're working in front of you, even art or something, it's nice to, like you're saying, open your chest, do back bends and stuff like that. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, because I know you've been to other teachers' classes. Obviously, it's a way of teaching. You're taught to teach like that.
I don't know. I've had 2 live teachers and one on the internet, so it's not I think I was too inexperienced to really take much in back then, to be honest. I've just sided with you, I'm afraid. Since as soon as you came on the scene, I was yep, that's what I want out of practice. I'll stick and see what she's... Well, I say that. I didn't get in touch for about 4 months, but,
Oh, yeah, it was June, wasn't it? Where were you for 3 months?
I know, I was just sticking with Adrian for a while. But I do think yoga with Adrian's really good. But I think it's definitely beneficial to be doing classes with an actual teacher, because I was doing some things, my alignment was wrong.
Also, even if that doesn't happen with me, I would always say, what you're saying about when you find you're like, yeah, that's it. I want to stay with her. Like, you can't, like, even if you don't like me, it doesn't matter. You will find that eventually if you keep looking. Like, I know so many people that have told me, like, you know, people I've met through work or something like that, you know, through an office or something. And then they go, oh, I tried yoga a few years ago. I didn't like it. And I was like, oh, you know, where did you go? I went to Leisure Center for a class. And it was like, oh, you just the one? Yeah. And it was just like, and I was like, oh, well, what style did you do? And they're like, oh, I don't know, it was yoga. And I was like, well, how do you know you don't like it? If you've literally, it's like saying you've tried a piece of cake and you hate it. It's like, oh, was it chocolate cake or carrot cake or coffee cake? It's like, oh, I don't know, it was just cake. It's like, well, what? Like, surely you got to give it a little bit of a chance. But I always think there is that style and the teacher that really will connect with you if you look for it, if you try.
I might just be very naive though, and very impulsive, because it's like that with cars. Like every time I've seen a car that I'm not a big car person, I just get a car for practical reasons, obviously. But every time that I've looked for the car and then I've gone to try it out, I've just been like, yep. That's fine, that'll do. So I may have done that with yoga teachers as well, but I do think there's more to it.
Yeah.
I think I was just lucky. So do you want to talk about those Niyama thing that you were...
We can start that, yeah, if you want to start that this week. Yeah, sure.
Well, I didn't know if that's what you wanted to discuss, because, you know, it's pertinent to what you're teaching this week, so it's in your head and stuff.
Yeah, sure. So one thing that I think every yoga teacher out there, pretty much, give or take a few maybe, will touch on in their training, even a very short training, is Patanjali, his 8 limbs of yoga. So that was kind of the basis for your Ashtanga yoga, which now represents itself as a set posture sequence. I am not an Ashtanga teacher. I haven't done Ashtanga training, don't really practice Ashtanga style very much. It's a very forceful style, very fast. I've been to Ashtanga classes. In the classes, the teachers like to grab you and push you to help you. Like not in a horrible way. Not like literally pushing.
It's not Fight Club.
No, not like that. I mean, like in an Ashtanga class, if you're trying to like get your hand over your head to grab your other hand and it's really close but it's not quite there, the teacher might see if she can ease the hands closer together by some, you know, pressure or something like that. So it's very gentle. You can always be like, oh no, it's not going anywhere, stop. So it's a very forceful practice, and it's usually quite warm, you know, because you're going quite quickly, like a vinyasa style kind of thing. So, but I don't teach Ashtanga. It's not something that I've really done a lot of training on. I've not learned the sequence, etc., etc. But Patanjali lived a very long time ago, which I don't actually know how long. Maybe I should, don't know. Anyway, and and he wrote the 8 limbs of yoga. So pretty much everything that we practice in all styles of yoga come from those 8 limbs of yoga, which link to the type of yoga called Hatha yoga. So Hatha yoga is your Hath being your sun and Tha being your moon. So Hatha, sun, moon, balancing out your cold and your hot and all of that kind of thing. It's all about bringing everything into balance, the yoking of the two. So Patanjali created the 8 limbs. The first of the 8 limbs is your yamas, and there are 5 of those. Those are for how you treat other people. Your second limb is your niyamas, and your niyamas are basically how you treat yourself, or kind of like internal work. And then it's your asanas. So what you actually do when you think of yoga, when normal people, you might say, think of yoga, and they go to yoga class, they actually practice asana, which is your physical postures. But that's only one of the 8 limbs, and that's only if you don't include the 10 yamas and niyamas. So it's like 16. So it's one of 16 really, which is quite funny when you're like, oh, I'm practicing yoga. It's like, wow, you're practicing 1/16 of yoga. If you want to think about it. And that's just the Patanjali side of it. That's not even going back into the other side of yoga. But anyway. So it's been a bit of a tradition for me for the last few years that every January I teach the first 5 weeks. I teach the niyamas, because January is all about all these New Year's resolutions. I want to get fit. Oh, I want to be skinny. Oh, I want to... I don't know. I want to go off coffee. I don't want caffeine anymore. Whatever New Year's resolution people have, which I think are getting more and more realistic, and they're less, maybe a bit less shallow than they used to be maybe 5 years ago or whatever. But anyway, I like to bring it up because the niyamas are that internal work. And then the first of the niyamas is saucha, which means cleanliness. So literally, you can take that to be actually clean, like getting a shower. I mean, who doesn't feel great after a shower, right? If you get a shower, you're like, that's nice, I'm all clean. And you change the sheets on your bed. It's like, yes, clean sheets.
Yeah, that twice a year feels great.
So there's the cleanliness, but then that also applies to your physical body. So I'm not a big fan of the word detox. I don't know your opinions on detox. Go.
I associate detox with marketing tricks like superfoods, and like if you drink green tea every day, you're going to like somehow get rid of all your free radicals and you're not going to get cancer in 20 years. I don't know. I mean, it's appealing, but that's because I feel like it's a marketing thing. It's a trick. I feel like, or snake oil or something. That's what I kind of feel like it is.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these kind of things are always based in certain facts. So obviously, having a really healthy diet is really good for you. Being at a healthy weight and having a healthy diet and exercising do actually reduce your chances of having bad diseases and problems. But so does your genes. So it's not 100%.
But I used to work with a guy, every January used to just eat watercress soup for the first week. And then it was just like, all right, that's going to like eradicate everything you've done for the other 51 weeks of the year. I feel like it's like it's offering someone a quick fix to say, oh, well, you can have an unhealthy lifestyle a lot of the time, but if you just do this once a month, suddenly everything's going to be okay.
And also, like, a lot of the time people are like, there's a bit of hype around detox in terms of like, if you nearly starve yourself and then you feel really sick or ill or you get really bad headaches or something like this, they'll be like, oh, that's the toxins leaving your body. And it's like, no, that's not the toxins leaving your body. That's your body telling you something's wrong. If you've gone off coffee and you get headaches, you know exactly what's caused it. You've gone off coffee and you need the caffeine to keep the headaches from coming. That's normal. And that will pass usually after a short time, days or whatever. But most things, if you feel like crap, it's probably because something's not right. But specifically with detox, you have a liver and you have kidneys, and they are what detox your body. They are what take literally bad things out of your body and they get rid of them for you. You don't need to detox your body. They do that for you. But what you can do is you can help your liver and your kidneys by not eating the things that stress them, or by not having, like, obviously everybody jokes about or knows about liver problems when you drink too much. Like, so if you don't have to detox, but what you can do is stop drinking and you'll help your liver. So in my mind, that's a good place to come from. So when you talk about saucha and cleanliness and you talk about your body in general, literally just being careful and being a bit nicer to it, not eating a load of junk will help. But you don't necessarily have to eat watercress soup for a week. There's loads of things you can do to help you kind of, in a sense, detox, but it's more like just helping your organs do their job. And then I suppose the last aspect of that is your mental cleanliness, which is what you come back to about meditation, basically. If you were to try and add a quality to your thoughts, like I have really, grade A thoughts today. I'm so concise. My brain's like, woohoo, great. Or, some days when you haven't slept properly and you get up and you're like, what's going on? And then you're like, oh, look, a bird. Oh, what? Huh? What's going on? And it just like, your brain's just like, nah. That's like quality of thought. And maybe that can be, that could go down a negative route rather than just a distracted route. Like if you have a tendency towards negative thinking and going in cycles and spirals. And I think that meditation definitely helps with that, or at least focusing. I've heard it called housekeeping. I quite like that. Like housekeeping your body and your mind. I don't know. I just think that, like, I feel very connected to my environment in a very physical way. So, like, when we first started doing these renovations on our house, I was sleeping in the living room. There was dust everywhere. It was horrible. Still in a similar situation now. I'm back in a bedroom, but, like, the house is a mess. Right. Things are everywhere. Half of my stuff's in a storage, place. And it's just like, it's horrible. And I feel that impact. So it's taken me a lot of work internally to not feel agitated by my space. But this just goes to show that how messy your physical space is really does have an impact on your mind. No matter how much you try not to, it will, because your brain has to see and log everything that's in the space before it can go, oh yes, okay, everything's fine, or I don't need to grab anything. Like if you're going to go to bed and you're like, what do I need? And you look around the room. If you have 2 things on your table, your laptop and your phone, you're not going to take your laptop, but you might take your phone and boom, you're gone. But if you've got like 30 things on your table and you're like, do I need anything? And then you have to look at every single thing. Yeah, sure, maybe not pause and think, but like you take that moment to go, no, just my phone. And then you run off. And it just adds that little bit more clarity. So, okay, I've been talking a lot.
Yeah, I didn't want to, well, I had nothing to add to it that I thought would be like, that would help anybody, but I also thought, if I just let her, I wonder if she'll just never stop. Yes.
I could probably keep going. Well, now when I'm teaching yoga, everyone's muted and I'm the only one talking for an hour, so I could probably keep going for a while.
No, it's never a problem. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. I hope you enjoyed it, as ever. I hope you've enjoyed all of them so far, everyone. I hope it's the highlight of your week, although that could be wishing that you had a otherwise very, very uninteresting, awful life, which I obviously don't want to have been the case. I'm just saying that I hope the show's good. I'm good at self-promoting, aren't I? If you like the show, we're on social media. Why not follow us? Our tags are in the show description. You can tweet us, retweet our things, whatever you like. I'm not going to put any pressure on you this week. Music is Dr. Turtle, Chingless Wonder, licensed under Creative Commons. I think that's such a stupid title for a song as well. I have to say it every week. See you next time when I think we're talking about other Niyamas, but there'll be some other stuff in there. Like I'll probably mess about and say something hilarious. She'll say something funny as well, I'm sure, because it's a joy, isn't it? The whole thing's a joy, I hope. Okay, carry on with your life now. Bye.